In '98, a handful of us were made aware of a possible assassin. We called him Goliath.
These were cold-blooded executions.
Yeah, enough. He also murdered my wife.
So what happened?
Because of us.
I'm terrified, Daddy.
God help us if it's Goliath.
20 years, not caught. Still out there.
How's your daughter?
Halt! On place!
Have you ever been closer?
At some point, the past has to die.
Not for me.
Bloodlands on BBC One and iPlayer.
Hello and welcome to BFI at Home in association with BBC Drama, HTM Mercurio and the BFI. I'm Miranda Sawyer and I am extremely excited to say that I'm here to talk about the thrilling new BBC One series Bloodlands with some of the brilliant people on the team that made it. So I'm going to do some introductions. First up, we have Jed Mercurio, executive producer of Bloodlands, which is the first drama coming out of his new production company. Hi, Jed.
Hi.
We have writer Chris Brandon. Hello, Chris.
Hi. How are you?
I'm all right. We have James Nesbitt, who plays DI Tom Brannick, who's a Northern Irish police officer whose past is still haunting him. Hello, James.
Hello there. How are you, Miranda?
I'm all right, thank you. We have Charlene McKenna, who plays DS Neve McCoven, who's Tom's closest cop buddy. Hello. And we have Lisa Dwan, who plays medic Tori Matthews. So welcome everybody, and congratulations on the series. It's completely brilliant. I feel like we should give each other. Well, I'll give you a round of applause. Imagine there's a massive audience.
Yes. Thank you.
Come on. So look, I'd like to start with you, Jed. Bloodlands is the first drama coming out of your new production company, which is HTM, as in HTM Mercurio, which is co-owned by you and HTM. I want to know why you decided to kick off with this series. How did you find it? Why did you go with this one?
It all started with Chris's brilliant script. I was fortunate enough to read the opening episode and was immediately hooked, and the production company was looking for thriller series that we could develop, and this just felt like it really hit the sweet spot of something that had something to say, had compelling characters, had a really compelling storyline, and really, you know, what was really so impressive was that Chris seemed to know exactly how to write a thriller that would grab people and hold them in the palm of his hand.
Yeah, not easy, Chris. And this is your first drama series, right?
My first drama, yeah. So it's very exciting and fantastic to be able to look to Jed to be able to work out how all the beats work and everything like that. Very exciting.
Did you work closely together then? Did he kind of move stuff around for you? Say, do this, do that. How did you work?
Well, the three of us, so Jed and I worked to begin with on getting the pilot ready for the BBC, and then when the BBC decided to maybe go further with it and wanted a second episode, then we worked out how it would work. Or maybe it was actually after the second episode, we'd done that with the BBC, and then when they greenlit it, we worked out how it would work with Mark Redhead as well at HTM Mercurio. And so between the three of us, it was a great sort of collaboration back and forth of how the story would work and sort of what needed to happen in order for the characters to be loyal to the story we wanted to tell.
Okay, and James, you came on quite early, didn't you? What attracted to your series, other than, of course, you're the star?
Well, yeah, I mean, that helps. Well, I mean, it was, I suppose, the nascence of it. For me, it was a long time ago in terms of wanting to work with Jed. I mean, I mean, Jed and I first kind of met each other really a very long time ago. I think when I was doing an adaptation that Stephen Moffat wrote of Jekyll, and I think over the years when we bumped into each other, I would mither him and kind of say, "Listen, when am I going to work with you?" And because he had such a big presence in Northern Ireland in shooting Line of Duty there. Although, of course, I wasn't involved in any of it. But I was very keen to work with him. And true to his word, a few years ago, I think at a birthday party, I think, Jed, for Lenny James, we talked and Jed said, "No, listen, you know, I really hope that something happens." Up to a few years later, and this script arrived. And when I sued Adam and my agent sent it to me, and Jed, I think, had pinged me an email saying, "Listen, have a look at this." And it was just astonishing. I mean, it was immediately arresting. It was new, and it also ticked the boxes in terms of me wanting to kind of like. I'm always very keen to come back to Northern Ireland because Northern Ireland is still very much home. I wanted to work back in Northern Ireland. I hadn't sort of tackled the. I mean, it sounds very actor to say I hadn't tackled the Troubles, but I hadn't done something really about legacy of Troubles since maybe 5 Minutes of Heaven, which was something I did a long time ago, and. There was something about the collision of the past, the balance between, examining that balance between, what peace means in Northern Ireland now. I mean, this is a very important time for the island of Ireland and its relationship with the rest of the British Isles. 2021 sees the partition of the 2nd century of the partition of Northern Ireland, the 2nd century of the state of Northern Ireland, the 2nd century of the independence of Ireland, the South of Ireland Republic. And I just love the collision of the old, but with a new and vibrant and continually emerging Northern Ireland.
I mean, it's a very Irish production, that's what's part of the thing that's so brilliant about it. You haven't got kind of English actors attempting Irish accents or anything. This is an Irish production with Irish actors. That's incredibly important.
Make a model of the car match those of Pat Keenan. Nobody saw it being dumped. The ferry crew were the first to notice it on their way to work at around 7 a.m. Then the call to us to say he'd been kidnapped came in at around 7:30. Confirming it's his vehicle will take a little longer without the number plates.
No bodies, explosives?
David found nothing.
This isn't a phone call.
Police emergency. I've taken Pat Keenan. This is Major White.
Sir, it is his, sir. Patrick Jarlath Keenan.
The address is flagged in the system.
Sir.
Make sure everyone has a photo of Keenan.
Something wrong?
Bring everyone over.
I'm really interested in your take on the Troubles, because it seems to me that in this series, what it's talking about is the emotional cost of the Troubles as well as the political one. It's like this is about the trauma of generations previously.
It's just, legacy of Northern Ireland is an important issue, and as we continue to emerge, I mean, it's difficult at the moment, obviously, with Northern Ireland Protocol, with Brexit, with what's happening, but it is that balance of protecting peace, of moving forward, of having a generation, as we do now, who are the first generation, maybe even in the history of Ireland, in the north of Ireland, born into peace, actually. It's about protecting that, but also, so we were able to examine that in a sense, but also able to show Northern and Belfast in particular in a really fascinating, I think, new context. Vibrant, happening, cosmopolitan, diverse. I almost feel wary about saying the fact that my daughter has a black boyfriend in it. Now, that's quite new for Northern Ireland. And to be part of something like that, but still looking at the emotional trauma, the history of the impact of the Troubles on individuals and on society as a whole. And I think even though we're making a thriller here, a contemporary thriller, a cat and mouse thriller and drama, I think we can also, through it, sort of examine just an emerging Northern Ireland and the importance of not being able to move on without really examining just the impact and the trauma that the situation has.
Yes, that's very interesting, isn't it? Because within the whole drama, if we really want to boil it down to two things, it's like, do we keep the peace? And this is like the peace, or the peace, or do we look for the truth? And that, I mean, you know, you can put that in a domestic context. Do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Like, do you want to take it out on a larger kind of screen? And that seems to run like a stick of rock through the whole thing, really. You're nodding at me, Charlene. Do you want to talk about that?
It was just because it's one of my lines in the show that stuck out the most to me for my character when I read the script was, but look what the piece has given us. And you have this very, very compelling argument of why we should drag, you know, go back and drag, and yet you've got an equally compelling argument of why we should let it be. And it's a moral maze, because you just so relate to both arguments. So that's why I'm nodding so much, because that's what jumped for me when I read them, was for me that line. I was like, oh, you could think on that for a long time.
Yeah, and it was always something I wanted wrapped up in that character of Tom Brannick, that he has both of these struggles going on at once. On the one hand, his job is to keep the peace, and on the other hand, his job is to seek justice. And both of those aspects of his job clunk up against each other, and he has to decide which is going to win.
Lisa, I want to talk to you as well, because we see your character in episode 1, but just it's a kind of brief couple of glimpses, and then you come into your own. Tori comes into her own as the series goes on. But she epitomizes one of these things, I think. She epitomizes one of these angles that we've been talking about, and that's a very an interesting way to go about things, isn't it? If you have this passion for this particular angle, it drives her, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And I think she's very alive, obviously, as a medic. Just even the oath she must have taken, and who she kind of is as a person, and to be fairly young as well, growing up during the Troubles, to the importance of peace. But that compromise that must be made internally, one, to keep the peace, and then just the things that refuse to stay buried. And I think that hangs as a wire. And I think what Chris has achieved is that compromise is there for all of the characters he's created. And that tension is palpable throughout. But she was a fascinating character in that regard, because there just felt like there was this driving force. Obviously, her interest in Goliath will be teased out as the episodes, not wanting to give too much away. But it is very surprising, but totally understandable. And that driving force just feels so right and truthful and necessary for her.
Yeah. Jed, I want to come to you, because I mean, one of the things that your work is known for, which I think Chris's work here is kind of reflecting as well, is this idea of moral ambiguity. No character here, except I don't know, actually, maybe I could say Charlene's character, but like most characters here are struggling with what they should be doing. They have a moral ambiguity in here. This seems to be something that, may I just say, turns you on. Would you say that's true?
Well, I certainly saw it in Chris's script, and that's one of the reasons that I became so kind of strongly drawn into the story. And I think that because there are no right or wrong answers, we all would say that peace is very important in a society, and we would all say that justice is important in a society. But when those two are potentially put in a situation of conflict, when one has to be traded against the other, that creates really large themes and really difficult decisions and dilemmas for the principal characters. And so what I thought really made the series work as a premise was the fact that they're embodied in the principal characters. Fundamentally, police officers, either they seek justice and damage the peace, or they protect the peace and they allow injustice to continue.
In the early part of 1998, in the months leading up to the peace agreement, a handful of us were made aware of a possible assassin who, it seemed, had access to police intelligence. He was never identified, but the suspicion was that it could only have been an inside man. called him Goliath.
Chris, when you were writing it, obviously you've got a sense of this kind of moral ambiguity all the way through. I mean, it must have been quite hard to wrestle with, to get all the bits to work together.
Yeah, in a sense it is, I think, and to get it within each character as well. But then I think you realize that everybody is flawed in some way, and so it's always enjoyable to find that flaw in each character and to sort of explore that flaw and see how far it goes. But yes, yeah, it's fun to sort of push it around and see how they're going to react.
I want to ask the actors now, because of this kind of moral ambiguity. I mean, I'm not an actor. I'm always interested in how you play that. There's like about, Tom has got about 20 different layers to play with in terms of what his past and what he's going through at the time and his relationships with all these different people. Do you have to plan for that as an actor? How do you go about that?
As you say, there are many layers, but I think at its center was his relationship with his daughter and his absolute determination to create or to protect her from the past in many ways, but also, however flawed so many of the characters are, I think certainly Tom has a hope for Northern Ireland, for a hope for the future of it. And for a society and a place that his daughter can live peacefully in, and so I think Chris and I talked a bit about it, and Jed and I as well. Pete Travis and I spoke with the director. Those about that, just always having Izzy at the forefront of the mind. Now that creates difficulties then, because we are talking about truths again. But I think that is what really drove me, was the notion that you'll do anything for your daughter, you'll do anything for your child, and that comes first, above country, above job, above one's own self.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. And Charlene, Neve is like, she's a person, I have to say, as an audience member, I was like, she's kind of approaching it like I would, like she's asking the questions that I would have asked, because she's like, so what's going on? What? Like this. So she has a different approach, doesn't she? She's got this boss that she's confused by.
Yeah. She's not at first, until it starts to everything starts to just not add up. And I think, Chris was, again, I mirror what Jimmy says in that I share a lot of DNA with Neve. And growing up on the border and all that. So in that regard, and I asked Chris for her backstory and stuff, and some of it's very similar to my own. So I had that base level, which was great to start from. But I think she's torn because she wants she's torn because she wants to respect the peace, but she wants justice. So she goes against some of what she's supposed to be, what she's told to do. She's going, look, I'll do it, because she believes in doing what's right. And it's tricky, but yes, she's I think she's a bit less morally conflicted as maybe the other guy. She's a bit straight down the line. So she's quite brilliant, and I think she's very calls a spade, and she's I think she's morally on point. So yes. I don't think she's as many back doors as some of the others, shall we say.
Lisa, you must get, we have very experienced actors here, you get lots of offers, but what I'm always interested in Jed's shows is that the women in the show are not just kind of there to hurry on the men, are they? They have their own life. They have they're not ciphers. They have their own life. That must have been attractive, to play somebody that's not just there as what people might think.
To say the least. You're so used to just being a reflector board for the thoughtful male. So it was amazing to have lines for a start, but also to have an arc, character projection. And the lines you were allowed to keep were just amazing. But, similarly to Jimmy's character, Tom, family is at the heart of what drives Tori. It's what brings her back to Belfast in the first place. And, I can certainly identify with needing to get to the root of the problem, that transgenerational trauma, to go back and kind of understand home in order to understand yourself. And I had just finished a little episode of that in my own life by the time this offer came in. So it was amazing. So I could immediately identify with Tori and feel that the audience at large will be able to do so despite the kind of twists and turns in her character because of her central driving force.
Yeah. I want to actually talk a little bit about what it's like filming in Northern Ireland. Jed, I want to ask you, what do you like about filming in Northern Ireland?
Well, I think it's particularly relevant to this because it's set there.
Yeah,
so that kind of, so when it came to decide where to set it, really there was one kind of place on the shortlist. And it's also a feature of Chris's script as well. You know, it kind of jumps off the page that it's set down in the area around Strangford Lough, that it's eerie, it's austere, it can be beautiful, it can also be somewhere that you would enter with a sense of foreboding. So it's a great kind of backdrop for a thriller. So I'm more accustomed to filming in and around Belfast, and we did that, and that worked very well. But I think one of the things that really adds to the visual identity of Bloodlands is that kind of what we dubbed Irish noir, that feeling of being out in the countryside, and the sense that maybe the law didn't have as much presence as it does in the big cities.
Yeah.
But having said that, with my Northern Irish hat on, I also love. I love filming. You know, here it's not just home. It's kind of my spiritual, professional, everything home. You know, I mean, and I also far too much. Like with the arrogance of an actor, I think it's like, you know, my responsibility more than anyone else's to kind of film here, you know, and bring the world to Northern Ireland. And that's all very true, very foreboding, stark at times, but also to see Strangford Lough looking so beautiful there. See that, to be filming down in the mountains of Mourne, to be seeing at the beginning in the opening, some of the opening shots, driving through Belfast with that fabulous soundtrack, you know, looking at Harlan and Wolf, Tom walking through a kind of a busy, kind of vibrant, youthful, you know, emerging new Northern Ireland was very important to me. And that's what I love about that kind of crash, the collision then of the story that goes against that. And I think that's what we want to see from dramas in a way now, for a drama like this in Northern Ireland, that you are seeing a new Northern Ireland in a different context, but also just always with the ghosts. And that's, but having said that, yes, I mean, cold beyond your wildest dreams. Yeah. But I mean, and then also there's like, you know, I mean, Lisa and I would tell you, I mean, my jaw was kind of paralyzed when we were filming down in the mornings that day, and you had various issues, facial
and
issues.
Icicles.
Yeah, she actually had icicles. She was being incredibly emotional, you know, I mean, just delivering this extraordinarily powerful, emotional, truthful performance. But it was so cool, but because she was sort of dripping quite a lot. I mean, there were icicles. It's incredible. But you know, it tightens you up. It makes you remember your lines.
You have to put them hand warmers, which are so carcinogenic and not to be near your mouth, on your face. I had to keep putting them on my lips so that I could stop acting like this. Because I was acting like this. And it was making us look so intense. I mean, so intense because it was so cold.
Yeah. There was one day on the Mourne Mountains where we were filming in a blizzard, and I hopped back into the car, and Lola Pettigrew plays Izzy, just burst out laughing. I looked like an extra from, you know, one of those disaster movies, Alive, blue lips and snow all over my eyelashes.
Yeah, yeah, and the gaffer's walking about in shorts. Yeah.
It looks lovely though. That's the point. Chris, did you have that in your mind as well, to have a kind of, you know, there's a lot of very beautiful kind of zoom shots around, aren't there, of the of Strangford Lough, and like it looks, you know, I've been there. You've made it, I mean, it is lovely, but you've made it look sensational.
It always felt very cinematic anyway when I was there, and the idea came from when I went back to help a friend make a short film in Strangford, and it was just two doors down from where I grew up, and it just felt like that. I mean, the light there is amazing as well, and it just felt like a really fantastic location to place something that had mystery, memory in it, and so yes, it's cold. I'm sorry about that, but it's but it looks fantastic.
I think it's fair to say that Northern Ireland has been a successful place to film because you know the troubles, the conflict did create a fantastic kind of canvas on which for art and drama and all to be created, and out of that we have incredible crews here. You know, we have you know, very brilliant technical people here, just not, I mean, behind the cameras and on camera.
Yeah,
it's also the least pretentious city I've ever been to. I didn't really know Belfast that well, but it's impossible to be lonely there. You know, you ask someone directions and they'll take you there by hand. And I know that sounds like a cliche, but that's really what it's like. And it's impossible to be lonely because everyone wants to talk to you. It's an amazing place.
Yeah, and you get some of the humour in there as well, don't you? You've got some good lines in the series, which are very Belfast. Like with a joke with a bit of a punch is what I always think.
Here we are now.
Let me ask you something. Why would somebody, a middle-aged man, say, a ladies' man, why would they be suffering from blurred vision?
It's not really my area of expertise. I mean, I'm a trauma consultant, but a ladies' man? Sure he doesn't have syphilis. He could also be taking too much Viagra.
Not affects your eyesight?
Let that be a warning to you.
I mean, essentially, can I just say, it sounds like it was fun. I mean, apart from the cold, and you know, obviously it's like quite a dark series. It's incredibly thrilling, but it is quite dark. But it sounds like you had a bit of a laugh. Am I right?
Well,
Jed's just grinning. Jed, I can just say, Jed is grinning away.
Well, he had the joy of being able to slip between sets. He could go from one set to the other.
Yeah, well, it certainly was a lot of fun for me because I was for a period of a few weeks shooting Line of Duty at the same time. So as soon as it got a bit cold or a bit windy on Bloodlands, I'd go to AC12 and have a nice interior shoot with a cup of tea. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, if you're doing good work and everybody's collaborating, then it does make the job fun. You know, there's a serious side to it. Of course there is, particularly when you're dealing with some of the themes that this series does, but also, you know, we're there to entertain. We're there to create compelling characters and stories with twists and turns, which Chris's script does in spades, and also, you know, the action sequences as well. It's very much something that's there to create that sort of compulsion within the audience. So I think we developed the sense pretty early on that we were landing that we were setting out, we were achieving what we set out to do. So that gives you a real sense of fulfillment on set.
Look, I'm aware of time. So what I wanted to ask you is I've got two questions. And one is what you hope that people take away from this series, because it does feel like something different to me. I mean, it's a thriller, but there's something slightly different about this series. And the second question I'd like to ask all of you is, do you have a particular moment that you'd like to share from the series that you enjoyed? I'm going to go to Chris first.
Oh, what would I like people to take away from the series? Good questions. I think if they're asking themselves good questions by the end, what would they do in that situation, and be able to listen to the other half of them that gives the other answer, then I'll be delighted. And the moments, I mean, I loved being on set every week, and as they were saying, the closeness of it, and the crew were absolutely fantastic, and some of them had, or one of them definitely had known me since I was a baby. And so that kind of feeling of family extended all the way through. And yeah, it was absolutely brilliant.
They didn't come up to you and go like that, did they?
Once or twice.
No, they threw him up in the air.
Yeah.
What about you, Jed? What would you like people to take away from this series?
Well, I think generally the series functions as a really, really great thriller. And that what that means is they don't know what's going to happen next, and they care what's going to happen next. So I certainly think at the end of the first episode and going forward, they'll really be invested in the characters and the story that's happening in the present. And it's so important that works, and we use it as a platform to address some themes that do have real world relevance, And so in that sense, I hope that it will help people to have some empathy with the troubles and the aftermath of the troubles and what people in Northern Ireland have been through, and the real courage of the community, which has now created this peace and prosperity and allows people like me to swan in over there and make kind of cop shows.
And do you have a particular moment that you would like to recall and share with the group?
Well, I keep going back to that island in Strangford Lough, and like poor Charlene, poor Jimmy. I mean, I've never seen two actors who looked more in need of a flask of hot coffee in my life. Unfortunately, I drunk it all, so I wasn't able to give them the dreg. But we did have quite an arduous shoot, and the level of professionalism and dedication just to keep on giving fantastic performances when you're on a kind of mound of long grass in the middle of a loch with like horizontal rain and a howling wind. I mean, that was an incredible achievement.
Okay, great. Charlene, what would you like people to take away from Bloodlands?
I mean, what Jed and Chris said was so eloquently and beautifully spoken, so I'll say that. And I hope they're screaming at the TV. I want them to be shouting at the TV. I want them to argue with each other. And I want, I'm just so excited for Northern Ireland to be seen this way. I'm so excited to just to have that fabulous Irish noir, that Scandinavian. I want them to want to go on holidays there, you know, yeah, there's a, it's the legacy of the Troubles, that it's not about them per se, but yet it brings up that fabulous moral dilemma that we talked about, and as Jed said, and get people, or you know, saying, but really analyzing both sides of what would you do and what do you think, and bring up a good up to 2021 dialogue about that subject. So yeah, and as for memories, same as what Jed said, the island, the day that we waited for, I don't know how many hours for the toilets to arrive. We waited and wait because they were like portaloos on a boat. We waited and we were holding it because you want to go as long as you can, because it's so, you don't want to break it up. And production were doing their best to get us toilet. They were doing their best, but the weather we hit, you know, they do storms by alphabet. We'd hit about Z at that stage in terms of names. There was Barry and Harry and Gary, and we were just like storms. And then we waited and waited and waited. And then we saw the toilets coming, and we were like, oh, they were coming on a speeder. And whatever happened, they turned around and went away again. And I'll just never forget the image of the toilets leaving on a speedboat.
And what about you, Lisa?
Like everyone has said, you know, I think these characters are so deeply thought out and plausible. I do think that they will generate a kind of empathy for the more kind of complex personal and psychological negotiations that people had to make in order to make those decisions to preserve the peace or fight for justice. And I think, you know, those sort of complexities haven't had time in the history yet to be teased out enough. And it comes at such a deep personal cost for every single character involved. And then, you know, like everybody said, we had so many laughs, and we had so many laughs amid obviously severe storms and blizzards, but like really intense material that all of us felt, you know, really personally driven and responsible to try and put across as truthful as possible because of all of our involvement in this story. And anyone who works with Jimmy knows that you can just turn on a dime and burst out laughing, and trying not to corpse often in very serious scenes when you've icicles dripping from your nose. But yeah, it was amazing. I had an amazing time on the job. I really, really loved it.
That's great. And okay, Jimmy, what's your hope that people will take away from this series, and what's your memory?
Well, you know, much the same as everyone's been saying. I mean, I hope that people that watch it are sitting on the edge of their seats enjoying the thriller, that they think it's truthful and plausible, that there are characters that they've invested a lot in, and that they'll be shocked, upset, energized, and entertained by. I also really hope that it is kind of another wee pebble in that wall, which reminds people that Northern Ireland was a real situation. You know, it was a real conflict with real pain, real loss, real trauma, and how important we're in the 21st anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, how important and fragile peace is, that they can see Northern Ireland in a brilliant new context which they can even learn from, and that they will be debating. You know, you want it to be a kind of a what's the water cooler sort of drama type thing, but also, that Northern Ireland has an awful lot. We have a lot to learn from the situation, but people can also learn from Northern Ireland. And in terms of memories, I mean, yes, there was amazing crack. I've mentioned it before in press, but I mean, the day that my Aunt Edith in Ballyclare thought that I had been involved in an actual petrol bombing rather than it being a stunt when she came down to see me. But also like just great moments of acting. I loved working with everyone. But there was a day on in the cottage down in the Mourne Mountains where Lisa and I were confronted with two, with big meaty stuff to do, and actually at the risk of sounding accurate, it kind of was one of those days that was challenging, but it did remind you why I wanted to do the job in the first place, and why the privilege is actually the fact that it's challenging, and that's the privilege of the job. The privilege of the lucky success is you get to be challenged with these days, and I think that we all of us throughout the job were aware of that, and we'd look at each other sometimes at the end of the day and think, well, we gave it our best shot today.
That's great. Thank you so much for talking to me. I'd just like to say I'm going to name you all because I always think it's nice to do that. So thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Jed. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jimmy. And thank you to you, audience, who are watching. Bloodlands starts on BBC One on Sunday, February the 21st at 9 p.m. And just to say that the BFI is a charity, so if you've enjoyed this discussion and you'd like to donate, there will be details of how you can do this appearing on the screen shortly. But for now, goodbye.
Thanks a million, Miranda.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much.
Lovely to see you all.